This is the place for Husker sports with the biggest names, the best interviews, and all the inside scoops.
I got a front row seat with a big tub of buttered popcorn and a greasy half-live chicken leg.
Now, here are your hosts, Chris Schmidt and Elijah Herbel.
Welcome to it. The weekend edition is here of the Average Joe Sports Show. Chris Schmidt and proud of Fairbury's here. It's Bill Doleman. Elijah Herbel Kraynak has texted in, and God love him, has an explosive
we don't need details. We don't need details.
Dog situation dealing with this morning, and that's good enough for me. So I hope
that definition of what happened completely changes the closer and closer you get to the 4th of July. We're far enough away. I think everyone knows what's going on, but the closer you get to the 4th of July, the more an explosive dog situation starts changing and meeting.
Brother Gertrude, you saw her tail kind of go jaws by you here on the screen before we hit play. And she gets her little edibles now for the 4th of July from the vet. And it's sort of helped, but that second 4th of July we had with Gertie the German, my dear God, we had to replace our spare room carpet. We put some sort of vinyl down because she tried to dig a trench.
She blitzkrieged the room. Got it.
She dug a trench, and that wasn't even the potty break situation. So how the hell are you, Doleman? Elijah, how's the week been? Good to have you in.
Well, it's a big day at the Schmidt household because it's graduation day, right? And it's a big day graduation.
Next Saturday's I'm going to be AWOL because he has graduation.
Oh, okay. Just big parties today.
The party is today.
So
it feels like graduation's today.
UNL graduation is about to happen. So my first class is, for most of them, is graduation day.
Yes. Do you guys remember your graduation day at Nebraska?
Yeah.
I
waking up way too early. And then I was a December one, so I was even like one of the ones that was cool in Memorial Stadium. It was at PBA. And I got in, got out, got lunch, got home. It was not too bad.
Yeah, that's like the microwave of graduations. Graduate in December or even more so summer.
Well, you know what's hilarious? So I graduated in 21, and the commencement, the commencement speaker, 2 days before the ceremony, came down with COVID, and they couldn't replace him. So he had this pre-recorded little video thing from his living room, and it was 5 minutes long, and that was it. And I was thankful for that. It was a very quick commencement speech. Got us in, got us out.
So I began my career about a month before my college graduation. I fell into a gig with Nebraska ETV at the time, now Nebraska Public Media. So I did a baseball game April before graduating in mid-May. After the baseball game, they asked me if I would be interested in calling the state high school soccer tournament. And back then, nobody in Nebraska knew anything about soccer, right? And it's probably debatable now, but certainly back then, nobody did. I didn't. So I did everything I could to study soccer, including taking the soccer rule book to my college commencement. Pulled it out from underneath my gown, and I sat there and I told the person.
What else did you pull out? I'm not being sick. I'm saying, did you have a flask?
Oh, yeah. So I happened to be sitting by a gal who ended up was marrying one of my best friends. So I said, just let me know when we need to go. So I read a soccer rule book while I was during my college commencement and prepared myself for the broadcast, which apparently went reasonably well, 30 some years later, since I'm still at it.
Yeah. Tuck is pissed.
Tuck. That's the last bit of soccer talk we're going to have on the Average Joe Sports Show. Okay.
Yeah. It was May for me with my graduation, and special because two moments in my life that were really pretty impactful. One, the first game I ever got to call for anything was KRNU, and it was Nebraska, Colorado, the 2000 game. So that was being a broadcasting student. That was the game that Professor Alloway assigned me, and it was a thriller with Josh Brown hitting the winner. And I don't know where the hell the tape is, but I did a pretty decent job. Cousin Dino came in to listen to it like he was the guy in the stadium listening to me, with his Walkman. And my dad dropped me off before. That was an 11 o'clock kick. He pulled up to Stadium Drive and said, go, don't screw it up, is for lack of a better term, and have a good time. And he was proud of me. And then my graduation, my dad dropped me off, which was cool. He'd never, ever, ever, ever taken me to school. Like but
and he told you not to screw up graduation either.
Right. He's like, he kind of looked at me sternly and it's like, this is going to happen today, right?
See, you got dropped off. What's funny, and I remember this now, I forgot about this till just now, is I pulled up for graduation. I was running behind, and I was going to park in that parking garage right next to PBA.
Mm-hmm.
And it was like a cash-only $5 to park there, event parking.
And I'm like, can you spot me till after?
I am going through. I have a change bag in my car, and I am going through my change bag trying to check out quarters. The lady at the front goes, "Are you graduating today?" And I'm like, "Yeah." And she goes, "Just go, man." For me,
and I'm going to get into radio, so I don't know when I'm going to ever have $5.
But I'll have plenty of change. Kraynak, how the hell are you? We're just doing a little. It's graduation day at Nebraska, and it's grad party day at the Schmidt house. So. Just a little nostalgia to get rocking. We'll get our starting five shout outs going with the Average Joe Sports Show weekend edition. Like and subscribe on YouTube, AJ Sports Radio on Twitter, where you can watch as well. So, and you're a big day looms, brother. And thanks for the advice. It's your bachelor party.
Okay, gentlemen, this is going to be great. Bill, I want to start with you on this. Elijah, you might know too. Okay, think of districts in San Francisco, and this is going somewhere. Okay, like New York has like, you could be in New York, you could be in like, I'm in Chelsea and Soho and the meatpacking district, like all at one time, right? There's districts everywhere in New York. San Francisco has a bunch of districts too.
Folsom.
Do you have some familiarity with some of the names? Like maybe not exactly what's going on, but
Haight-Ashbury, Folsom.
Okay. What is the one district? The one district, if you know, and you might not, it's okay if you don't. Is there one district that comes to mind that you're like, not a chance in hell I'm going to spend 4 seconds there, let alone a night? Does any name come to mind?
Not off the top of my head. I just know that
I don't know.
Haight-Ashbury is historic,
Mark,
and
clearly,
and Folsom Street is a place to avoid at certain times.
Okay. And I don't know. Folsom Street might run through this district. I don't know. So the place, my wedding is in the Bay Area, right? That's where she's from, and so people are booking hotels. There's a hotel like for the what, right? There's a room block. You could just stay there, and it's right by where everything is. So. Our boy Chris over here, we got him sorted this week. He books a Motel 6. How much? How much is it?
It's going to be 106 a night.
What's the hourly rate?
It's
on a weekend.
It said. Listen, the hotel said in the tech district. 1.9 miles from the ballpark, because your wedding reception and your hotel.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I said, all right, that's not an awful walk or Uber.
The tech district, they called it?
Yeah. It was downtown. It's fine.
Okay.
And
see if anyone in the stream can guess.
And I'll say this.
Kraynak,
your reception, Kraynak's reception is going to be in the Willie Mays suite during a Braves Giants game. It is awesome. So happy for you. Aubrey's awesome. It's incredible.
However,
I screwed up.
Okay. So then he shows me. I'm like, so you all sorted? You know, you got your hotel. He's like, yeah, I got my
Spilled
hotel.
his beer.
Motel 6, and I'm like, Tom Bodette doesn't leave a lot of lights on for you in Motel 6's in San. He books the Tenderloin District. Okay, and if anybody's not, so the reason why it's called the Tenderloin, this could be kind of urban legend. I did not verify this information, but from what I understand, the reason why it's called the Tenderloin is because in order to incentivize police officers to actually work that district, they had to pay them a ton of money so they could afford a tenderloin. So they call it the and it's basically, and you know, in cities, it's one of those things like New Orleans or whatever. Like you turn one corner and all of a sudden you're in a different world, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, imagine like 15 porta potties just getting dumped onto a street, right? Like that's about the scent that you're dealing with there. That's about the smell that you're dealing with there. I mean, one of my friends on the text thread was like, what do you want to play? Fentanyl hopscotch? Like, what are you doing? Like, needles everywhere. And so it's a problem. Like, because we want Chris to return. You know, like it's we don't want a one-way ticket situation. So we got him sorted, and he is no longer staying there. And so Operation Save Chris worked out this week, which was good. But it was perfect, dude. I mean, there's like 80 districts you could book. Like there's only one that you definitely don't want to, and he just zeroed in right on. You know.
I just Googled Tenderloin District and went to Google Images, and it's all pictures of tents. It's
that didn't show up with the old booking.com app.
One of the images was a YouTube thumbnail that said, "How terrifying is it to walk through the Tenderloin District?"
Dude, it's funny for work. Probably 7-8 years ago, people take a lot of public transportation there, buses, trains, whatever. And there was this Australian guy that we worked with at the time, and I was with this guy Joe too. He's like 6'6", thank God, because we didn't know San Francisco, but we took this bus, we got off, like, oh yeah, we'll just get out here, walk down this way, and then there's our hotel. Perfect. We didn't know we were walking through the Tenderloin, right? And we have our suitcases, 3 just businessman white guys, like we're walking along with our our roller bags. But thank God Joe was with us because he's 6'6", and because people were looking, they were looking at us like sizing us up, and like, nah, that guy's big. We're not gonna mess with them. So we rolled right through. But
they'll end up in a Netflix true crime documentary. Hey, while we're piling on Chris here, and while we await Brandon Vogel, he's standing by in the green room. Bring him by just a second. Do you guys see the Salt Dogs game last night?
Salt Dogs, no.
Yeah,
it's their home opener.
Check out who threw out the first pitch at the home opener.
Hey, run that back. Let's see. Let's call this one. Let's do a quick play-by-play. Oh, it mutes us when that plays. Let's see that one more time. That was good. Let's break this down. Can you slow-mo it at all? Can you scan slow?
I could try to do some video editing, but let's bring in Brandon Vogel here and then run it one more time. One more thing. It's curveball. Schmidt went with the curveball.
Hey, a bit inside, right?
Or outside.
Bit inside. But hey, that guy was crowding the box. That's true. Depends. Was it a lefty or a righty? I assumed righty.
Pray to God it was a lefty.
Yeah.
You got him to chase. I like the PA guy saying, "Not bad, Chris. Not bad.
Not good. Not bad." Brandon
hey,
Vogel
on a 1-2
live
like
why
that,
he gets up with us on Saturday mornings. Vogues, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. I really enjoyed the backstage hearing tales of Chris at a Motel 6 in San Francisco. That's starting on hard mode in all ways.
In the Tenderloin, man.
Show up
In
your
the
motel room, there's just blood on the walls.
Like, I know, right? Like, I bet you if you ranked all Motel 6s, and I'm not judging, okay?
I love Motel
Stay at a
6.
Motel 6. I know. If we've stayed in all of we've all stayed in one of those. But I bet you in their portfolio of 1,000 hotels, that probably ranks like 997 or lower. I'm guessing. Probably. I looked it up on Yelp, and Yelp is they're a little bit of a tougher critic than most online forums. Dude, I don't even think they got to 2 stars on that one. Like, and that's a special kind of crappy. That is.
I'm gonna be honest. You should have let him go through with it, because the bit afterward would be a lot better.
I was looking forward. I was looking forward to the Saturday show from that Motel 6.
We're going to have a Saturday show because
be live from the Tenderloin.
I'll be alive, but it's also weekend visit and Adidas camp day for Nebraska. So I am bringing my computer. Kraynak, you're off the hook. But
yeah, that's good.
As he gets ready. Brandon Vogel's with us from Counter Read. Vogel's a lot to get to. I want to go back to and get into some football. We've had 15 minutes of pinata time, so I'm going to talk some football between first pitches and Tenderloin Districts and the emotion I'm going through with my pride and joy having his graduation party.
And your ceiling fan still isn't on, so go ahead.
Thank you. And we'll get our starting 5 shout outs, I promise.
There's a lot going on here today.
Yeah.
So, Vogues, you're doing the 3 acts of 2025. If you subscribe to Counter Read, you know this. If you don't, you need to, counterread.com. But you hit on Nebraska's first 4. You've looked at Nebraska's October, and we're anxious and awaiting. It's May. We want August to get here. What's Cincinnati look like? What's Michigan going to look like? And then what's the momentum like into October? But let's dive into this Nebraska-Minnesota problem, if you're a big Red fan, because that is the game. While I think we're all old and mature enough to know that it's best to put Nebraska as a winner in pencil versus ink in today's day and age, despite all that Matt Rule and his recruiting and just the build he's working on has done. There's just more uncertainty about Nebraska game to game. Over the years, you've learned that the hard way. Maybe you learned it the hard way or the rich way at the casino. I don't know. But, really Nebraska's Minnesota game, with whatever happens against Cincinnati and Michigan, it's got a ton of weight, doesn't it, in mid-October? Spoiler alert, there'll be a live Average Joe sports show at the Graduate before Minnesota. Can't wait for that.
Yeah,
game.
I think it does. When I look at the schedule, it's not the most important game, but I think it might be the most telling game. You get into the season, things change, and who knows. But I look at that one as, I kind of view both Nebraska and Minnesota as teams in the Big Ten this year that are good bets to be upwardly mobile. So when they face off almost right in the middle of the season, which one wins it? And Nebraska hasn't beaten Minnesota in its last 5 tries. Iowa correctly gets a lot of attention for beating Nebraska in excruciating fashion, but Minnesota isn't far off. And they play to they have some similar traits in that they're usually out execute their opponents. And that's how they win. They don't make the mistake, the opponent does. And for Nebraska, that's been obviously probably its biggest issue over the past 4 or 5 seasons. So a lot goes into that Minnesota game, I think, when we look at it this far out.
How is it that Nebraska and Minnesota have developed a rivalry that is one-sided in Minnesota's direction? That to me, it's the most mystifying thing of Nebraska's tenure in the Big Ten. that it is Minnesota that Nebraska is trying to overcome to establish some type of foothold in the upper echelon of the Big Ten. The year they brought Maple Valley High down here with 30 players, and what that was like the COVID game before
2020.
yeah, with all the the cardboard cutouts in the stands, and they bring a high school sized football team down here and won, much to their surprise.
Yeah.
Right. I just don't understand how that's happened. The year that Schmidt and I went up there and Jacques Yant couldn't score from a yard out at 260 pounds. Can't believe that. Jeff Sims makes his much ballyhooed debut and can't hold on to the football before the Amigos turnover commercial. I don't understand it.
I was pissed.
Yeah, I'm not happy.
Yeah, I mean, and and I'm forgetting exactly when this kind of came up. I think it was definitely during the Frost era, but PJ Fleck rubs a lot of people the wrong way, and I get that, but I think sort of like Iowa, you can look at the roster construction, et cetera, and see like Nebraska and those teams, Iowa and Minnesota in particular, are probably pretty even, but based on recruiting rankings, whatever, you'd give Nebraska a slight edge there. It just comes down to they built some stronger teams. I mean, I think back to the 2018 Minnesota game, the last time Nebraska beat them, and that was the Frost era has started. Like they had gotten their first win, and then they just torched Minnesota. Offense everywhere, and you're like, oh yeah, this is what everybody expected Nebraska to eventually become, and here it is in game 8 or whatever it was of that first season, and you finally saw it. But then after that, I mean, I think it was that 2019 game when Nebraska went to Minnesota, and Minnesota just ran the ball on them all over. And that was it was early on, and there'd be more, I guess, painful and unique losses to come during the Frost era. But that was a beatdown. And that one still sticks with me. So why is it Minnesota? I don't know, but I think until we actually talk about like, hey, you got to get over Minnesota, which it's always hard to feel that way from a Nebraska perspective, but that's what it really is.
And back in the old Big 12 days, or Big 8 even, the end of the year was with Oklahoma until, of course, the Big 12 killed that rivalry. But it was Oklahoma. That was the focus. But there was always the October game against Missouri that was black and blue.
Yeah.
Right? That was get over that annual challenge because you knew it was going to be a rock fight. Usually you won. And in the Big Ten, I would expect that to be with, maybe Illinois along those lines, a team like that. I can get the Iowa stuff, but the Minnesota thing is like Nebraska not being able to get over the hump against Iowa State annually. Right? That happened like once when Marv Seiler ran in slow motion through Nebraska in 1992. That it actually happened once. But trying to become have supremacy over Minnesota in the Big Ten is like trying to get that over Iowa State in the old days.
Yeah, I think that's accurate. Minnesota, like the Tracy Claeys era was weird, and the Jerry Kill era, like they were getting a little bit better and were pretty solid. But I think, and it's kind of a lesson for today's college football. They made a good hire in Fleck. His style and approach isn't for me necessarily, but it's really hard to argue with the results. I mean, that team went 8-5 a year ago, but was closer to some bigger things. And I think in terms of the offseason, they did about as well as anybody in the Big Ten in terms of addressing their roster needs. So their win totals, I think, only 6.5, which seems way low to me because I think they're going to be good.
Well, the big
Can you
question,
believe-
and this goes back to 2019. I think the big question with Minnesota in 2025 is, will they wear sleeves in their pregame warmups? It's a big deal. And you could argue the entire series flipped whenever Nebraska wore sleeves for pregame and Minnesota didn't.
Don't forget the hoodie.
That took me right back. That was a dark post game press conference. Not just because the game was at night, but
It's Minnesota. Can you believe how long PJ's been there? He's already done 8 years.
Yeah.
Doesn't it seem like he's only been there?
Kind of like the guy's up
right?
for parole. He's trying to get out.
trying to get out that long.
time.
He's been in front of the Pro Bowl a couple times with UCLA, with the NFL.
Trev, you love me. Trev, you love. Oh, it's PJ again.
But you bring up the 2019 season. That was Hoodiegate, right? And they were 11-2 and won the West, right? They won the West that year. Went 3-4 during the COVID year, but then 9-4. Took a step back, 6-7 in 2023, but still made a bowl game. And then last year, 8-5. Now, but the thing with PJ, you remove him, remove his antics, remove that stupid oar and the boat and whatever the hell's going on there. Like, just in terms of how they actually play, though, I love how they play. I love how those guys play. They are they're physical. Their lines are serious. They're pretty, I don't know, devoted, I think, to what they're doing. You don't see a lot of flash or a lot of infighting or any kind of weird sideline antics outside of PJ. They're schooled, right? They kind of know what they do. They kind of believe till the end. They keep fighting. It's similar to Iowa with a little more offensive punch and a little less defensive punch, right? And then you mix in an Ibrahim or something like that, and look out. But his guys. I mean, they might be Branch Davidians, but they believe. Right? And that's half of it. He does a good job of doing that.
yeah, I mean,
Right now, Husker fans are saying, time to call in the tanks.
Nobody wants to be necessarily described as a cult, but in today's college football, if you're a Minnesota, not the worst thing. You're not going to have the most money to spend, in terms of NIL. So getting guys who are really devoted, and I mean, you can look at their transfer portal this year. They made some big additions, and their losses weren't all that painful. And I think that is a reflection of when you sign up to be a Gopher, you sign up for the PJ Fleck thing. And as hard as it might be to understand from the outside, all the evidence is it works.
It's Brandon Vogel with us, counterread.com, weekend edition of the Average Joe Sports Show. And I think the telling part, very real, that Minnesota game on the 2025 schedule for Nebraska. And that is the off-ramp or on-ramp to where Nebraska wants to go. We were talking with Coach Barnett this week, and I asked him specifically because there's a lot of teams in the Big Ten that you're wondering about in 2025, what's their storyline. And we're wondering about, Nebraska and that breakthrough possibility with all that they've done. And we'll have more time during the summer to kind of dive into that. But you're wondering about Illinois being a one-hit wonder. You're wondering about Lincoln Riley making $11.5 million and being a game under 500 his last two seasons, despite the wealth of talent and the war chest. And then there's Illinois. Are they a one-hit wonder? And then there's PJ Fleck. Can he keep doing what he's doing? Because I can argue Fleck was probably closer to 9 or 10 wins than the 8-5 last year with that team against that schedule. And he's we've sat down with him enough times to just kind of get what he's about, and he's got to be different. What Barnett was talking about, and I think Nebraska has this with Matt Rule, is you can go get a certain type of coach for your program. You can go get an X's and O's dude, savant, just game changer. That's a Lincoln Riley, right? Or a Bo Pelini, defensive mind, right? When you pair him with, a Sue, you can go get a motivator, right? Think of Barry Switzer, and Barry knew football and knows football, but Barry, guys loved him, right? And they wanted to play for him. And then you can go get a culture guy. And that's what Barnett really kind of hammered home. And I think Nebraska has that culture guy with Rule as well. And we all glaze over with the topic of culture, but the way that Barnett laid it out for us was it is a difference maker because it pulls you through tight ball games. I mean, that's really the name of it with the style of coach you get and what your program needs.
Yeah, pulls you through tight ball games. And I think at a place like Nebraska, Minnesota, et cetera, those type of places, like I think it's almost a non-negotiable. Like if I were an acting AD, that's what I would look for, because that's something that, your recruiting rankings will fluctuate. Hopefully for a new head coach, they're, going up, but teams historically recruit how they recruit almost regardless of the coach. And for those that don't, well, Ole Miss is a good example. It's hard to argue with the job that Lane Kiffin has done in this kind of second act of his career from FAU to Ole Miss. And he's, been great at the talent acquisition part of it. But if he leaves, like, what does Ole Miss have to show from that? And I think one of the things with culture is hopefully, you've got something that's a little bit more static and a little bit more transferable. And those are essential. You could look at Tom Osborne, and I think part of the reason he was as successful as he was is he was that X's and O's wizard. Like he absolutely was, but he also had the culture. My players know I care about them piece of it too. And well, you saw the results.
Yeah.
Well, and it had to be that way for Tom with culture because, he was so devoted to running the option in an era when the era began that you got to throw it. And people still wanted Tom to throw the ball more. Okay, we just won 56-7, but see what we can do. Appreciate the input. So, he was an option guy through and through once he made that transition with Turner Gill. And that's what we had at Nebraska for, however, was it 15 plus years after that. But when players of those eras were wanting to go find those sexy offenses, the fun and gun or whoever was slinging it around at the time, Tom was still running the football with a fullback, and a couple tight ends and throwing the ball 15, 20 times a game. And people even around here, we got to throw the ball more. Oh, okay. See what we can do about that. But it had to be culture. It had to be selling mom, dad, grandma, grandpa, and player, probably in that order, that if you come to Nebraska, you're going to be taken care of by the culture that we have created. And it really started with Tom and then filtered down to the locker room, and players knew that when they came here, they were going to be taken care of. And I guess we got to run the option, but we'll be okay. And then we had the black shirts and you had Charlie on defense and all that. Certainly a different topic, but it had to be culture that people bought into for Tom, because it wasn't the offensive scheme that was sexy. Except those of us who watched it.
Yeah, I mean, a different era for quarterbacks to a degree, but you think, Nebraska's in these high-profile recruiting battles for players that can go to Florida and Miami and Notre Dame and wherever else. Think of one of the top running backs in the country, from that era. Like, to go to Nebraska and play in that offense meant you were kind of signing up for the culture piece at the front of it, because it meant something different than going and playing, for Steve Spurrier. So it was interesting, the passing thing this kind of goes back to the Minnesota part of it. Like Mark said, they're devoted to their style of play. They are. But I would also call them extremely practical of they are the team that are well, we thought we'd have some outside zone runs that would work and they're not stopping it. So we're just going to do that. We're not going to get cute and play around with it. That was kind of takes me back to the Osborne, you're not throwing the ball enough. The irony of that is when he took over as OC, way back in the late 60s, he moved Nebraska to more of a pro style kind of passing offense. He knew all that stuff. He was a receiver in the NFL, and practicality, was like, the option helps us win. So if I can average 8 yards of play on those options, like we're not averaging that. Well, they did, but if you throw it 30 times, you're probably going to have a tough time being as efficient. So it was just
one of the ways I got in with Tom to a certain extent before hosting his shows, I was still in the sports information office. It was early on in my career, I think, but Tom wanted to have for lack of a better word, some research or a study type thing done, analyzing. So before Jonah Hill and Brad Pitt started Moneyball, I'm in the old SID office with pen and paper and ruler drawing columns. And I had to go through, he asked me to go through like from Nebraska's change to the option offense. So that would have been in the 1980s, and analyze the number of times all the teams in the Big Eight threw the ball, what their efficiency was, yards per catch, yards per attempt, how many touchdowns per attempt, all these things. I mean, it was notebook after notebook like this. And it came out that the most efficient passing team over the however many years it had been, the most efficient passing team in the Big Eight over a dozen years was Nebraska, averaging about 15 to 18 passes per game. The yards per attempt, the yards per catch, and the touchdowns per attempt, per game were far better than anybody else in the Big Eight. And oh, by the way, the winning percentage was astronomically higher than everybody else, except of course for Oklahoma, who was on par with Nebraska at the time. So this was even before the 60-3 run. And I got those. I have those notes somewhere in one of these files, but it was all pen and paper. And he'd come down and say, "Well, could you take a look at this? And could you take a look at this?" So that was a summer project for me. That was a summer project for me when I was early on in my career and winding up being in the SID office. But his offense was the most efficient passing offense in the Big Eight.
Yeah.
Sir, this Gerald Armstrong fellow might be wide open, and he will be the walking embodiment of your efficiency. 19 a catch and 16 career catches, 8 touchdowns.
But my favorite,
I wonder what I wonder what the percentage was, the touchdown percentage on the option pass in particular. He'd run it like twice a game.
Best play ever.
Right? Looks like it's an option, and then all of a sudden they just kind of pull up, and then a tight end is 10 yards in the clear, at least. I mean, there's no one there. All you have to do is get it in the neighborhood. You don't need to throw a dart.
Exactly. So go get a quarterback that's a running back, and maybe about 4 times a game he can knuckleball one downfield 40 yards, and it's one-on-one coverage or a blown coverage, and it's good night.
It still worked against Northwestern in 2023.
In that 94 Colorado Nebraska game, Bill McCartney talked about Nebraska throwing to the tight end like they had to use a trick play. We didn't expect that.
Yeah.
The option, it still works. I just looked it up. Army ranked 4th nationally in yards per pass attempt, 9.2, tied with Ohio State.
Wow. And you see some of the service academy quarterbacks, it looks like you're watching a high school option. Like the way they throw it, it looks like they're really laboring. The ball looks really big, and it's like, and it gets there. It is
every quarterback is Todd Doxson.
Yeah. But it's fun. It's a fun offense. Let's get our shout outs here real quick. Brandon Vogel joining this here weekend edition on the Average Joe Sports Show. Like and subscribe on YouTube. We'll be back tomorrow for the Sunday Live at 10:30. But you've got Jake, who got in all the way from Ohio at almost 3:40 this morning. God love you. Jake Corn Raider is here. Is saying shout out Hallam Fest breakfast going on down there at the Legion from 8 to 10. So if you're got a hankering for some amazing pancakes, Corn Raider invites you down. Don't forget about the cornhole tournament. Yes, Jeff Snitley, part of the Boulder Peace Treaty. Snitley boys are expert cornhole players. But yes, Mr. Erickson's back. Good to have you. Walter is in. The last time Nebraska went over in Vegas, the regular season, Walter reminding us, was 2016. Of course, Circa Sports out with that win total number at 7.5. Justin is in. Uncle Larry, thank you. James checks in. Good thing there is optimism for football right now. Baseball is frustrating as hell. Love it.
Hey, how about softball? Softball's got a ready-made path to a super regional with LSU falling last night to
Absolutely. We'll get into the Jordy Ball discussion point. Red Knight is in. Tuck, good to have you, bud. Thank you much for checking in. You've got Coach Brandon here, and that is just awesome to have so many of you checking us out Saturdays. Captain, good to have you, dude. Nebraska's average scoring margin of victory, 38 points. Another stat for you this morning. David in, and then as I scroll down, other Dave is here. Good to have you. Jake working after work, Bush Light apples calling my name. You go ahead, Jake. You can have all the Bush Light apple you want, big cat. And I'm getting clowned for the frugality by Steve. I'm frugality on steroids, apparently.
Yeah. Motel 6. Yeah. I'm Tom Bodett, and we'll leave a needle in the room for you.
We love Tom Bodett commercials. Brian Snetley, the other part of the Boulder Peace Treaty, says, looks like Schmidt's been watching too much Husker baseball pitching when it comes for tips. Hey, they got over the plate far and away. It was low and away. Puffins is here. Walter still hates PJ Fleck. Red wine 65.
I think it was the leg drive that was lacking in the.
It was bad. Like, I did go from the rubber, and I wasn't.
You. Let's all watch it one more time.
So speaking of personalities that people don't like in sports, we've been talking about PJ Fleck. Trevor Bauer is really good at leg drive. The guy, and there's nobody violently pushes off the rubber more than that guy. And so I think if you watch him next year when you get the call for the Salt Dogs, dude, I think you'll be topping out at about 47, and I think you'll get that thing across.
You know, I struggled to break 70 in the old high school career. Junior hit 84 on the gun, and 82 with
the you last night.
Pardon me?
Did they have the gun on you last night?
No, I disabled it.
Or it just didn't calculate. It was just like, wait, what?
The gun said never again. You got the old guy in the front row at Dodger Stadium all those years with the fedora standing back like this, you know. Hey, it could have gotten a lot worse. I have thrown a ball before. I'm not Lamar from Revenge of the Nerds. I mean, I have
no. Hey, completely. Like the form was serviceable, man. Like, you know, you see some people throw a ball, you're like, oh God, just don't ever do that again. You know, like it's okay. We all have our strengths, but no, that was pretty good form. I just want to see a little more leg drive.
Yeah, it was bad. It was bad. I haven't thrown a ball in a while.
Vogues, might want to limber up a little too. You know, get it back, get the arm back a little more too, right? Flexion.
This is
trunk rotation.
Elite youth baseball coach Mark Kraynak. Chris Schmidt.
They don't let me near the pitchers.
No, they don't. The Iron Horse is here. Vogues,
just play catch. Just play catch. That's all you're doing.
Coming up with Counter Read, my friend, counterread.com. As folks can subscribe and check out what you and Aaron Sorens are doing. It's awesome work. And, dude, it's so good to have your content during a long off season, bro.
Thank you. So from the weekend, we'll wait for this demolition derby of the Big Ten baseball season to sort itself out and try to make some sense of that for Omaha. And then coming up later in the week, I'll conclude my off-season schedule series with a look at November, which, you know, nothing to worry about there. It's historically been very, very kind to Nebraska. So that's what's coming up from me.
The Tenderloin District of finishes to Nebraska football 2025.
There you go.
That's pretty good. Vogues, we love you, brother. Thank you much.
Thanks, guys.
See you, bud.
Sharpie, how we doing?
Good. Hey, Kraynak, your kids have sliding mitts?
No,
Okay,
no,
just checking.
no.
I've been to a couple of youth baseball tournaments in the last month, and kids have sliding mitts, not on just one hand, but two hands.
Yeah, it's an epidemic. I mean, I get it to some degree, but at the same time, I'm also like, when was the last time? Because presumably that's to prevent an injury to the throwing hand and fingers.
You
or
bust
something.
your fingers,
But-
you slide back to first, you go into second. We bought the sleeves, we bought the freaking oven mitt. I mean, it's,
but I'm just trying to think.
you
Like,
can't run.
are there like these known incidents where it's like, oh yeah, the season was going great for, Johnny Fastball until he slid into second and it ruined the seat, right? That's just what kind of, how big of a problem is that when you're sliding, right?
At
Like, I
7.
don't think it's
At 7.
right.
Yes.
Right. Now, at the same time, I do understand wearing a little bit of armor, like on the ankles, on the elbow, something like that. I do understand that because let's just like zoom out a little bit. There's a very hard ball flying at you at a very high velocity, and it could hit your bone, right? Like, so that I could see 20 years from now, them looking back, be like, did you know those jerks back in the day didn't even cover up their, they didn't even cover anything up. I mean, you're pretty exposed. So I do understand.
As an umpire, I've taken my fair share behind the dish. It don't hurt that bad.
Yeah. Well, you're a tough kid. You got good bone density, big milk guy, I don't know. So I understand some of that. But no mitts.
Speaking of sliding mitts, you don't need a sliding mitt whenever you just go up to the dish and hit 2 home runs after winning 20 games in a season. Jordy Ball, how about that performance yesterday? Nebraska softball. I mean, they're in the driver's seat in that regional with LSU losing yesterday.
Oh, definitely.
How'd she do yesterday? For those that missed it, on like you all, not me. I watched it. I just want you to describe it.
Put in 4 innings of work, 3 innings of work, 3 innings of work in the circle. Got through it in like 45 pitches. They pulled her from the game, and then while she's at the plate, she hit a 3-run home run and a solo shot. MVP of the game, MVP of the season. Now
2020 club.
Yeah, 2020 club. 20 wins and 20 home runs. The 4th player in NCAA softball history to do that. And now Nebraska's playing the 4th seed in the regional today with a chance to advance to Sunday, which would mean you have 2 chances to beat whoever comes through between UConn and LSU. I mean, Husker softball's in a really, really good place in that regional right now.
We go to
OKC. Sarah Connor, man. She is Sarah Connor from Terminator.
I wouldn't. Here's the thing. She's so good. First of all, she should be the National Player of the Year.
Yes.
Which would be amazing for a player that was not on a national seed. It just shows you how good she has been. And it's not like she just showed up this year. The thing that, like, a lot of people that didn't really follow softball but follow her and know of her prowess and her impact didn't even look at the bracket in Baton Rouge and said, oh, yeah, they're going to be in the Super. They're going to play Tennessee in the Super. Not even looking to see who Nebraska was playing, just thinking that the mere presence of 98 at the plate or in the circle was going to get them to the Super Regional. And I wouldn't push back. I mean, she's got that kind of impact. Now, they're a good team. I mean, they've hit, 100 home runs, 100-plus home runs now. They score a lot of runs. They're good at the plate. They don't strike out a lot. I mean, they're a good team, but it all begins and ends with her. And it's amazing. I mean, I got a front row seat to see Komine pitch for Nebraska, and every Friday night was electric. And it was every Friday night, whether you were playing in Austin, Stillwater, or Haymarket Park, or Buck Belcher Field, like you were like, Nebraska's going to win because we got Komine. That's how Nebraska softball is, and you can pitch more in softball. So you're like, every time Jordy goes out there, Nebraska's going to win. But man, the path opened up last night. I don't know. For really in-deep softball fans, this team isn't as good as I think the 13 team, which was really, really good. But man, they got a nice little path to the College World Series in Oklahoma City. And wouldn't that be a story if she got back there against, or her former team would be there, and she would be bringing Nebraska to the College World Series. It'd be amazing.
Quick aside. When you bring up Shane Comine, I always respected Chris, but my universal respect became cemented. Schmidt's like the king of nicknames, right? Like he comes up with the best nicknames and analogies. His nickname for Shane Comine, and I think at the time, Gary, I think I was okay. See you later, Gary. Gary disappears right as I'm addressing him there. He will be back. But and I was interning at the time at Sports Nightly, and it was like Jim Rose and Gary Sharp, right? And doing Out of Bounds with Schmidt, at KRNU.
We did our weekly
Schmidt
show
comes
on
up,
Thursdays.
Schmidt's nickname for Shane Comine. Okay, Gary, you're back. I was getting into the story of when I was interning and you and Jim were doing Sports Nightly. And I remember being so excited to come tell you the nickname that Schmidt had come up with for Shane Comine.
Yeah.
It's brilliant. The Hawaiian Punch Out.
Yep.
Come
True
on.
story.
Like,
True story.
That's pretty good.
Get that Schmidt kid an inhaler.
I was just like drop the mic, dude. That is perfect. I don't know. It didn't 100% stick, but I think Gary gave it some life. I think Gary used it.
Well,
multiple times.
Somebody that people listen to is talking about it. That was important.
Yeah. It stuck. It was a great nickname.
It started with Chris Schmidt, folks. I'm telling you, that's like
what's good is
in your biography. There should be a whole chapter on that.
The obit. I know. The good part of that was the access we had when baseball launched with Van Horn, where it was Shane Comine or Hopper or Johnson or
Harvey,
Will Bolt eating pizza in his dorm room with us coming on the college radio show, but also doing, of course, what Gary was doing. Yeah. And then, boom, the explosion of just baseball madness in a great way, where you're going to Omaha, and then you have a 3-year run in about a 7-year window. And then Childress goes to A&M with Bill Byrne. It wasn't quite the Mayflower moving van and Baltimore to Indy, but it wasn't good. And you had a little bit of success after that, but then, man, and right now Nebraska's in a spot to go Jake Taylor and win the whole bleeping thing. At least they can extend their season. Sharpie.
Yeah.
It just doesn't feel like there's a ton of
hope. It's a weird. We've talked so much about Nebraska baseball. First of all, they saved the Big Ten by making it to Omaha, because if Nebraska baseball is not in Omaha, I don't care how exciting Oregon is or how many people Iowa would bring, you wouldn't hear anything about this tournament. First time last night, I was driving on I-80 back towards Omaha, and I saw a billboard promoting the tournament. But around here, you don't hear any promotion. Because they just think, okay, Nebraska's going to be here. Nebraska will bring fans. We'll put butts in seats. It'll look good. We'll televise all the games. I don't know. Last night was one of those decisions on who was pitching. It just like the night before, guys. If a team comes back down 8-0, and they score 11 unanswered runs, and they win a game like this, and they're a team that has fought through adversity, and it's the same thing. They fall behind. They fight through adversity, and they keep fighting, and they come out the back end. You would think this would be one of the more beloved teams. But it's, my listeners, the people I talk with, you guys listening to your show, people are like, okay, hey, let's go. Maybe we can have a run in Omaha, or maybe let's find a way. If we make the NCAA tournament, great. But let's get through the season and figure out what the heck happened.
Yeah,
they don't have that bona fide star that you can point to. You go back to Max Anderson and Bryce Matthews. You could tell that those were premium talents, and those guys were really, really fun to watch. Last year, Brett Sears just lights out, works so fast. Just a great opening night pitcher. Like this team just doesn't have that guy. Yeah. I think they have a collection of pretty good players, but they don't have that guy. Yeah, who's the can't miss arm? Yeah.
Well, let's face it. Nebraska's run through the Crown Tournament in Vegas sucked all the energy and all the attention away from the early part of baseball season. So it was hard to, was hard for them to get any traction with publicity with that going on. I think Mason McConaughey's injury probably had something to do with that, because as you were talking about earlier with Comine, and I don't know if Nebraska's had a player get that kind of attention since then. You know, I mean, his 150 pitch game in the NCAA tournament is legendary, right? But I think if McConaughey had been the pitcher that they had expected him to be, and all of that you have that Friday night, oh, we got to come see him pitch before he goes to the big leagues, you know, a little bit. And him getting hurt derailed the staff, what they plan to do with the staff, all of that stuff. So if they had a bona fide star in the making on that team, that flamed out with an elbow injury. Unfortunately,
well, you had McConaughey's injury. You also had Tucker get the old line drive, and just now, and I know his Friday night didn't go the way he wanted it to, but Nebraska came back. That would have been an option earlier in the season had he not been injured for the Friday night guy. Instead, you put your Sunday guy in Walsh, fellas, into that Friday role, and he gave it hell for you, but just had a tough finish. But so it's been trouble on the mound from a consistency standpoint. At least the offense flipped post California roadie from an approach standpoint, and they've gotten a little bit better at putting up runs. But hell, we talk about the base running that's ran them out of some opportunity as well. So it's just inconsistent on all facets, and it's continued.
It's frustrating. But they are exactly who their record is. They're a 500 team, which I think they have a nice collection of talent, enough to be not a 500 team. But they've done it to themselves, you know. But they can also do it to themselves and get to Omaha. And because of the way the format is this year, if you win 4 games and you're lucky enough to start the tournament on Tuesday, Wednesday, I mean, you could set up where you could win the auto bid and win in Omaha again. It's just a weird season that I think some people will be relieved when it's over, and then start over next year and figure out what went wrong this year. And you know, the roller coaster of Will, this was kind of in Nebraska's eyes a down year. They'll pop right back up next year because that's kind of what Will has done.
Give you an idea, by the way, quality of arm that Nebraska lost in Brett Sears. Little update on his minor league prowess. So he started the year in Augusta, which is Atlanta's low A, and opponents batted .211 against him. He had a 1.93 ERA. He just got called up to Rome, which is high A, and he is 2-0 on 11 innings pitched. Opponents batting a .143 against him, so he's a starter. They're not doing mid-relief with him now. But total this year, 29 innings, 43 strikeouts, 5 walks. I mean, the dude is on fire right now, so he's on a fast track. But that's that's what I'm talking about. Like, Nebraska doesn't have, I don't think, on the roster right now that's pitching or playing somebody that's going to get drafted and have that kind of success and be on a fast track, right? Like, who is that guy?
Nebraska,
if there is one, they're young.
Nebraska's success in developing pitchers since Will Bolt has showed up, though, I mean, Matt Waldron's a guy, Spencer Schwellenbach's a guy, Cade Povich is a guy. You got Brett Sears now, and we'll see what happens once he inevitably gets the call up to AA and maybe up to AAA. Well, we'll see. There's still a long path to go there, but good track record that hasn't necessarily translated, I think, to like the Big Ten slate. I mean, Schwellenbach was playing a different role at Nebraska, obviously, but it hasn't always translated the success that you have had with guys on the bump since Will Bolt's come to town. And not to mention the fact that Bryce Matthews playing really well in the Houston Astros organization. He's been playing well. Max Anderson, I'm not sure how this year is going for him, but I know the last couple of years have been solid for him. Not outstanding, but solid.
Yeah, they've had dudes. Sharpie, want to go to football here for a little bit and dive in kind of on the heels of what Vogues was diving into with his summer project. And have you looked at the schedule and kind of circled a can't miss game for Nebraska this year? Have you done that exercise, like, as you kind of flesh it out? And I'm not sure where you're at or how much you touched on Circa Sports is 7.5, but is there that pivot point game that, all right, they don't hit their over if they don't win this game, or it's the under for sure if they don't hit this game?
Minnesota.
Okay, so you're
middle of October.
We're all road tripping up. We should just get a minibus and
we'll all stay at the Motel 6.
Motel 6.
No. We're staying at the Graduate.
Hey, it's a good point. Real quick though, Big Ten. You guys have been around to a lot of the Big Ten stadiums for whatever reason. I just do non-con road trips for the most part. Haven't been to a lot of conference places except for Minneapolis, and I loved it. I thought that stadium was incredible. I thought the area was awesome. Outside of the big three of Columbus, Ann Arbor, Happy Valley, where would y'all rank? And I guess you got to take Autzen and we're not counting the new Big Ten teams, right? Just the
new family members
but a lot of us have been to Seattle and Autzen and UCLA and USC.
I thought Autzen was a little overrated, by the way. It was cool, but I didn't think it was.
Yeah. I could see, with Autzen, I could see why it gets loud, but that game was over. That game was over immediately.
Well, it was Justin Herbert too, right? That was Justin Herbert as like
first half freaking points.
Nebraska roared back though. It was a game in the.
Why?
Fourth.
Because the fourth and fifth team were in.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, but where would you rank Minnesota in terms of road, like compared to, sort of the company it keeps with Purdue and Indiana and I don't know.
I'm over 3 Maryland and 1 for 1 with COVID.
I love the Twin Cities. I think it's a really good stadium, but it doesn't feel college. It feels like you're at a pro stadium.
Yeah.
But I think it's a convenient place to watch football. State College is a pain in the ass to get to. But once you get there, it's such and it'll be interesting to see what it looks like now because they are redoing the stadium. I mean, it's a mammoth place. I mean, it's humongous, but it's a pain to get there. Ann Arbor was very underwhelming to me. Very underwhelming.
Hear that a lot.
Yeah.
It's just you walk in. Well, first of all, there aren't many rows above the street. You walk in and there's another 70 that are down in front of you. It just I don't know. I think the big house is overrated. Now the horseshoe is pretty damn cool. And then when they added to the end zone and they made the end zone opposite the bottom of the horseshoe larger, that made it more intimidating. Purdue is. I think we go to Purdue because it's convenient and we can get in and we can have all kinds of access and you can have a section to yourself.
The thing that traveling around
big time.
The thing that traveling around shows you is how lucky Nebraska fans are to have Memorial Stadium. I mean, the Horseshoe is a great stadium. Don't get me wrong, but like Memorial Stadium's picturesque from the outside. I would not say that about the Horseshoe. You get out there to Columbus and you go, "That's the Horseshoe." You get inside and it's beautiful, but from the outside you go, "That's the Horseshoe."
You've got the kind of the, I don't know if it looks a lot like the East Stadium of Nebraska. That point of Columbus. I loved Columbus. I thought East Lansing on campus was really cool, and I thought Spartan Stadium was really awesome.
Just stay away from Lansing. East Lansing.
East Lansing is where you want to be.
Lansing is the Tenderloin of Lansings.
Yes.
You should have seen the hotel room that Schmidt booked us in Lansing. Oof.
You got a theme emerging this morning. Cheap bastard. Yes.
And not only that, but when Schmidt not only books the travel and the hotel, I'm not sure you've ever won a game on the road.
I have. I've never seen a road victory. I've never seen a road. No, I've still never seen a road victory at Nebraska.
2022.
Wow.
Well, the place, dude,
when you can count them on one. When you can count your wins on one finger, your travel days might be over when it comes to covering the Huskers. Fans will put a roadblock up. Just let me weighing in on these stadiums. I think that by far the best new stadium in the Big Ten is the one at Northwestern. And if I was Northwestern, I would shelve the plans of trying to build something, and I just keep playing on the beaches of Chicago, because if you're gonna attract dozens of fans to your home games as you have throughout your history, other than the Gary Barnett era, I would suggest just staying right there, playing on the rec league field. It's a very aesthetically pleasing game to watch when they take the wide shot. You don't hear the peppermint schnapps bottles getting knocked over quite as much as you do in the old stadium. So my advice to the smart guys at Northwestern is just leave it as is. Just call it good.
Stay where you're at.
Yeah, stay where you're at.
There is something to be said, though, for going to a stadium that isn't sort of elite and where there's billions pumped into it, just because it's just it's so cool to see like these elite high major programs playing in, the equivalent of like a souped up high school field. You're just
is the Coliseum and Rose Bowl? I mean, the Rose Bowl looks incredibly beautiful, but is the Coliseum a dump? Or is
People think it's a dump? It's not great, but it is historic. There is something special, like seeing the flame out in the end zone, walking in. It does feel like one of those college football cathedrals. I didn't think it was bad. It's not the nicest stadium I've ever been to, but it does have that cathedral kind of feel in college football, that history, that a lot's been done here kind of feel whenever you walk in. So I like it.
South Bend delivered, don't you think, Sharpie?
Oh, my God. South Bend was unbelievable.
Yeah.
Yeah, that place is great.
I want to caution people, and probably people have done both. The trip to Los Angeles this year to the Rose Bowl. The Rose Bowl when UCLA plays there is not the Rose Bowl when the Rose Bowl is happening.
Yeah, sure.
It just the way that it almost looks like they put a new coat of paint on it for the Rose Bowl. The other thing about the Rose Bowl is, and I haven't been there for a few years. It's not a comfortable place to watch a game because the seats are so tight, and it's not like getting in and out of the seating. Well, I think it's tighter than Memorial Stadium.
Really?
It's like an uncomfortable experience to watch a game in there. If the Rose Bowl is going on, oh man, it's cool because then you have the mountains. But like UCLA, they still tarp off a lot of seats, and they try and sell you the nostalgia of the Rose Bowl. Now you're walking up and you can see the familiar Rose Bowl logo on the front of the stadium, but when UCLA is there, it looks completely different. And they're trying to sell you are at the famous Rose Bowl, and you're like, no, it's not January 1.
If Nebraska is in contention,
oh geez,
do you all think that game has 20? This is the high end, but if Nebraska's maybe one loss, undefeated, legit, in LA, with how many fans Nebraska has in Vegas,
there'll be a lot of Nebraska fans at that game.
Look at last year.
Like, could you do 25 to 30?
Yeah.
Well, Elijah can tell you firsthand all the Nebraska fans that were at the USC game.
What was the number?
What would you say if you were to estimate?
I would put it at 10 to 15,000 out of. I mean, there's probably 50,000 people there that day, and I think it was probably a little under a quarter Husker fans, if I had to guess.
And Nebraska was in no kind of contention at that point.
There was like little hot pockets of Husker fans all across the stadium. I'd say a little under a quarter of the stadium, I think, was probably Husker fans.
So you look at when Minnesota and Iowa played at UCLA last year, it just felt like the majority of the fans were visiting fans. I think you'll see the same thing when Nebraska plays out there.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think you get at least 15,000, and maybe
that's kind of built in.
Yeah,
right? Because
you have such a great alumni base on the West Coast, and especially in the state of California, and even more so in Southern California. But to Elijah's point, if Nebraska is playing well, or your point, Mark, and that game is really significant for Nebraska, I mean, you'll get some more people that will roll in there. I will tell you another place, and it seemed like Nebraska was always going there like every 7 or 8 years when they play the home and home non-con with Washington, which I thought was a great non-con series.
Yeah,
that was a great trip. Seattle's a beautiful city. Right there on the Mount Lake. The stadium, how loud it is, the way it's configured, and they've actually they poured a lot more money into it since Nebraska last played there. The first time Nebraska goes to Seattle, I think you'll see the same migration of Husker fans that you saw in the 90s. And then what was it, 2010? I think it was the last time Nebraska played there. That was a big
Jake Locker,
Taylor Martinez day. Yeah, I think that'll be an extremely popular road trip when that pops up on the schedule. On the other end is how many people are going to go to College Park, on the second weekend in October.
I'm glad you're bringing that up.
Mark, because he's got his brother-in-law out there, and I think that's about it.
Do you go because it's easy to get into and the tickets are abundant?
Well, right.
Because there's nothing about that stadium that says, man, here is college football. You're like, hey, can you guys go and play this inside a Cole Fieldhouse? Because that strikes ACC college athletics to me.
Yeah, very disinterested fan base there. Ever since Friedgen left, they had a couple years where they would fill it up, but at least there's crab cakes and DC football nearby, and like there's you're at least in an interesting area of the country.
Is it? But, I mean, I know it's by DC, but College Park area, is it scenic or is it just urban?
You can see the Capitol from the press box.
Okay,
there you go.
On a clear day.
The other Brian, I was going to offer to host you guys on an East Coast trip for the Maryland game, but we can't afford to lose that game. Yeah, good call.
Hey, that's a really interesting game because I think Michigan State. I'm a big Jonathan Smith fan.
Yep.
And they have a really good quarterback, and it's year 2 of him in the Big Ten. I think they'll be a really like a tough 6, possibly 7 win team. That sounds crazy.
They'll sting somebody, don't you think?
Yeah, they'll get somebody you don't expect. But look at where that game falls. It kicks off October. Then you go clear across the country, I guess halfway across the country to Maryland, and then you got Minnesota, and then you got Northwestern. Like we talk, I think November is the month for Nebraska to say, okay, this is who we are. But there is some potential landmines in that month of October. If you're not playing well and week to week, you're getting better.
Michigan State's the first road game, isn't it?
No, they come to Lincoln after Michigan.
They come to Lincoln?
Yeah, it's Michigan, then a bye week, and then Michigan State. The schedule, to get your feet on the ground for Nebraska. I know we say this almost every year. Like the schedule to grow actually is pretty conducive for Nebraska.
Mm-hmm.
Like you have an opportunity where your opening game is on the road, and you don't go back on the road until the middle of October.
And that opening game on the road is going to be a decided home field advantage, right? And so you're playing in a friendly environment all the way up till October, and then even your road trips are not sort of these devastating, ridiculous crowd all over you kind of. I mean, Penn State is obviously, but outside of that, Maryland's not going to. UCLA. I mean, those aren't
Minnesota will.
Those aren't huge home field advantages.
Minnesota will prepare you for road adversity in the Big Ten. I know it's not going to be elbow to elbow, but tough place to go play and win. Clearly, Arrowhead to get out of the gate. You're at a neutral site. You'll have a home field advantage, presumably 70-30, 80-20. But it's still a pretty experienced team you start off with, and then. What do you do with the helmet / brand name in Michigan coming to town? I mean, it's fascinating to see where this thing can go.
Don't you? I think this is and we are smack dab in list and off season. I look at the schedule this way. Like if you want Nebraska to change the narrative in your mind, what games are games that if Nebraska is different, they win? Cincinnati and Minnesota stand out to me because there will be a lot of buildup to a neutral site opener. Yep. And those kind of games, Nebraska, whether it be in the conference or a neutral site, they've lost.
Yeah.
As favorites. So Nebraska will be about a touchdown favorite. So you start the season and then that game at Minnesota. Teams that live in your neighborhood or are slightly above you or below you, you have to beat. But Minnesota's beaten Nebraska. And that's a road game. That's a tricky road game in the middle of October, which you will have started possibly to build up some success. And one of my hesitations is, can this program deal with success? Like when they start winning games and start playing well and people start paying attention, can they just overcome that demon of a game that you drop and the post-game call-in shows go on for 5 hours? Minnesota's that game because, Minnesota's just, they're tricky, and they've had Nebraska's numbers, and it's a road game, and it's in the middle of October. And then we get to November, and that's when you'll really find out where this program is.
I think this season will, if they actually want to touch the ceiling, play to their potential, play to their talent level, play to their coaching staff's investment. I think you need to get through September unbeaten. And if you don't, you need to learn that lesson. So your mulligan is Minnesota. Say Michigan's Michigan, and they figure it out, right? Say their freshman's as good as advertised, and they again, it's another one score loss. So be it. You can't let that trend continue. You better then make good against Minnesota. And then as tough as November is on paper, UCLA could be one of those scary teams because they've got dudes, despite what got drafted. You go out there, get a road win. It didn't happen for Nebraska. It didn't happen for Iowa last year. They went out and stubbed their toe at the Rose Bowl. So, it's possible. You need to beat USC in November at home. Don't care what the situation is. That's got to happen. And then you got to go split Penn State and Iowa. And if Penn State doesn't go your way, it can't look ugly. I mean, it can't be Jamal Lord ugly. In 02, it can't be one of those games.
I'll tell you, Penn State, just looking at their schedule, you kind of see why, because they, some folks are thinking they're, potentially preseason number one, but the over under for them by Circus was at 10, right? Yeah. Right.
You got Oregon and Ohio State at 10.5.
Penn State's schedule is pretty grueling, and not just who they play, but it's where, right? So
we're at Oregon, aren't they?
They have a cake September. Oregon comes to them. That's their first legitimate test. But then they're across the country at UCLA, right? Back home with Northwestern. And then they're at Iowa, at Ohio State, back to back, right?
That's dangerous.
Home with Indiana, at Michigan State. Then Nebraska comes to town. Nebraska has a bye going into Penn State. So Penn State is going to be
Penn State. Wow.
Yeah, Penn State is going to be tested. And they've recruited well, so you would presume they have the depth to withstand it. But they're going to have a lot of wear and tear on those tires by the time Nebraska comes to town.
For me is Michigan. Nebraska has got to get over some mental challenge that they would have. Not that they're playing Michigan. That to me is. Have they built up the program in 3 years to where they have the physicality to play with them, but can they just get over the fact that they're playing the helmet and that it's Michigan, that this is not the Jim Harbaugh, J.J. McCarthy national championship team of 2 years ago? This is the second year of a coach who knows what kind of traction that program has right now. Did they dip a little from the national championship season? Then they're going to be right back up because he was part of that national championship narrative? Or will they continue to come back down and slide? And, instead of being, I don't know what their numbers are. You know what their victory total is. Is it 9?
They're 8.5.
8.5. Okay. That's kind of where I thought it would probably be. So Nebraska has to look at Michigan as not the Michigan of 2 years ago or anything like that. That they have built their program up to where they can compete with those guys. Moore's not going to be on the sideline. And how much that factors in, I don't know. He made his name filling in for Jim Harbaugh. So I'm sure they have quality coaches. But if Nebraska is beaten mentally by the fact that they're playing Michigan, then what's their mental strength the rest of the way, especially if they lose that game? But if they go into it thinking, look, we've established ourselves by now. Let's just go out and prove it. And if they do go, Schmitty, as you say, unbeaten in September, then you carry momentum into Michigan State, and then you go on the road for the first time for a true road game. You should have the confidence that you can win anywhere.
Well,
Michigan is the hinge game.
To take it back to last year, I'm not worried about Nebraska not waking up, being scared of the logo on the helmet for Michigan. To me, that's last year's Colorado game. And then you have the bye week and then Michigan State, which is last year's Illinois game. Where I'm much more worried about this team looking past Michigan State 2 weeks later, and you lose that one, and it derails your season just a little bit because the confidence goes away. I think Memorial Stadium's going to be
4-0. Your pats on the back. You go into a bye week. Everyone's buying you drinks and saying, "Atta boy." And then here comes old Jonathan Smith here with a 12-inch blade.
That's why people talk about, Rule talks, I think they can handle adversity. My thing is, can they handle success? Because a lot of those guys in this program haven't, in 2 years now into year 3, they've had wins in a row, but then when they don't win, what does that do? How do you react to it? So how do they deal with success? Because they're going to have moments this year where they're going to go on a run, where they're going to have back-to-back weekends where they play well and they get better, and they start to see a number next to their name. And do they completely ignore it and just go out and it's a week-by-week thing? Because it's Nebraska, if they dip their toe in success, more people outside of the norm will start to pay attention and talk to them and want their time and all of those things that it's great to have, but then you got to learn how to handle that.
It'll be interesting to see if Nebraska has their 1992 moment this season. And you learn from that. What I mean by that is you look at how mature the 93 team was from getting to where you want to go, and that's playoff talk and all that stuff. Because I think the talent's down at the stadium to compete for Nebraska, but that's part of handling that success. 92 team thought they were great. This will be the second take a drink or hit the bingo card Marv Seiler mentioned, but that 92 team was, coming off the KU and Colorado dismantlings, and they're playing good ball. And then they, as we've been told, had a bad week of practice. And
how did they ever lose that game?
I still see Mark Seiler running in slow motion through Nebraska's secondary on a 73-yard touchdown run.
I know. He's just
the Nebraska-Colorado game of that year on Halloween night remains one of my favorite college football games of all time. But it's ruined by the sequel for the next chapter.
It was bad. Sharpie, I gotta ask you as we wind it down, the weekend edition here, the Average Joe Sports Show. Like and subscribe on YouTube. Give us a follow there, and also on Spotify and iTunes. And our old buddy Brian Christopherson put it well yesterday. PR pickle is what he said when it comes to recruiting and the Metro and Jet Tamalia, the super talent from Millard South, got the Bama offer. Of course, Iowa State's hosting him on his official. Rule touched on what he needs to do, and in-state communication. Nebraska does not take in-state kids for granted. They recruited Carter Nelson like they needed to. They ended up getting Danny Kalin on campus, of course, and got him signed before he had hit the portal. What's your view, man? You've coached, I should say, you've called this kid's games for a while. It's not every day a Nebraska product gets a Bama offer. I'm super excited for Steve Warren and his son getting an offer from Michigan State. Kudos to the talent that's continuing to develop in the state of Nebraska. But you have the Nebraska fan base that there's just a thought bubble. Okay, dude, be right with the quarterbacks you are going with, because Nebraska's worked their ass off as well to get quarterbacks in the class for 26 and 27.
All right, so let's go backwards here. Nebraska got a dude in 27. Now, Braylon Warren's a good quarterback, and he got Virginia, Michigan State, and his offers are loading up. I think he's a Missouri, Kansas State, type guy. And I think Steve is, Nebraska has, they made their assessment on both of the quarterbacks from Omaha, and 27, they got a dude. So you feel good there. Let me ask you guys this, because they assessed where they were with the quarterback, and the current quarterback has a brother in the class of 26, and they took his commitment while Jet was, starting to ball out and starting to rack up offers. If Dayton Raiola had an offer that was above Nebraska, would you feel different? Because isn't this, in the class of 26, isn't this a Dayton versus Jet discussion?
It is. And I've talked to some people that have recruited college football at a high level, and they've landed some players and cheered for as a kid. They have gotten NFL talent to Lincoln, okay, guys that were on the former staffs, and they are really high on Dayton. Their words to me, he could be better than Dylan. He could be the best of the bunch.
I'll believe that when I see it. Personally.
I know, and that's a fair response. But coming from a guy that, I trust his recruiting acumen because, he brought first rounders and so many to Nebraska over the years. He's not just, doing the family a solid. He's saying, okay, I think the kid can be really, really, really good. Yeah. And you're just wondering about the old family discount. That's the part of the conversation. There wasn't much complaint when Dayton said, yeah, dude, I'm in. That was great. But now you've got this local talent, this super high ceiling guy in Jet that's out there as well. And it's a weird spot for Nebraska fans to be in. You've got the family part, and then you've got the in-state kid that it makes Nebraska fans sick to lose in-state kids elsewhere.
Well, yeah, first of all, the offer the other day, and I am so happy for Nebraska kids throughout the entire state. They get more exposure and get offers. And let's just, because I guess you gotta do the PSA. Since Rule's been here, the in-state guys that they fall in love with, they're batting a pretty good percentage.
So it comes down to the evaluation trust.
Yeah, and getting on them early. And also they're, sometimes they're dealing with, situations from the past about recruiting Omaha kids that they weren't even here. Or, to be honest, I think Nebraska and fairly, they took an abundance of Omaha kids in this past couple of cycles that didn't pan out or no longer on the roster. So they are a little bit more picky and choosy when it comes to the city of Omaha, but they're in the balance of recruiting in state how many ready-made guys do they have, or how many guys can they get ready? Like how many Vermasses, Mooberries, Reynolds, do they have? Benning, Jones, those kind of guys. It's great though that Nebraska kids get offers. And we had in Omaha, 2 guys got significant offers the other day. One from Alabama. DeBoer is a quarterback whisperer. I was like, why don't they have their quarterback at 26 yet? Do they have a decommit? What happened? They also on the same day offered the 9th ranked quarterback out of Cincinnati. But it's Alabama, it's DeBoer. What do they see that Nebraska doesn't see? You go through that whole song and dance. Keep an eye on this one. So the other significant offer, Corey Pittman III, who's in the class of 27, who is going to be possibly a 5-star, who already has a Nebraska offer, and it was one of his first offers, just got an offer from Oregon. And that's a legit offer. I know what's behind that offer. That's a committable offer. It's interesting. Does it make Nebraska's job easier or harder that there's more exposure for in-state kids? In Oregon and Alabama, and Oregon's been here before. They had Avante Dickerson, and then they have Devin Jackson from Burke. Alabama.
2 Eotes out there too.
Yeah. So hey, they're telling you that have trust in us in recruiting in-state. Nebraska has been aggressive in-state. It's just they have 2 guys in a position group that you're basically only going to take one high school guy. You committed in 26 to the brother of your current starting quarterback, and then you hit a home run in 27 because there's not going to be a guy that's throwing the ball in 27 in Nebraska that's better than the guy you got in Trey Taylor. It's just you have to trust Rule, and I think they're hoping that, Dayton comes through, or how about this? TJ Lateef.
Yeah. You've tried to stack your quarterback room accordingly. The other part of this thing too is it's been a long time since in-state kids have seen Nebraska crush it on the field, and the recruiting job may get a little less difficult if you start winning at a high level. You're doing better in November, and you're a contender in the Big Ten. I mean, you knew you were going to go play and win at Nebraska 30 years ago if you committed to Nebraska and were an in-state kid. It's just a different ball game with where the program's at right now. And some of the blowback was, why is Nebraska not offering a kid that programs that are better than them are offering? But you've got a different dynamic. But no, the quarterback room's been planned out for Nebraska with Latif, and then you've got Dayton, and then you've got Trey Taylor. So, hey, in this musical chairs world of quarterbacks and portal, you can't expect all of them to stay, but just find the guy that'll stay, get developed, and then be ready when it's his turn to step in as a red shirt or a guy that's spent time in the lab for a year or two, if you get a second year.
Nebraska is going to have to do its best recruiting job on keeping Trey Taylor in the fold. They got the commitment. Now they've got to wait. Now it appears he said all the right things and done all the peer recruiting stuff that for now it is solid, but who knows what's going to happen as time goes on and somebody comes up with a bigger bag. That's always possible. The Dayton Raiola thing, I don't think they're going to have to recruit him. I remember when Dylan was being recruited and I was told that guy's not going to be any drama because Dayton has grown up, just like Dylan did, Husker through and through, and that's what he wanted to do. So Dayton Raiola is not getting any offers because I think it's pretty well known that this is where he's going and there's nobody else is going to come in and change his mind. That's what Dayton Raiola's wanted to do forever. So he's not getting big time offers. Everything, I think things are legitimately cut down with him.
Appalachian State and Charlotte do not warm my cockles.
No, that's. Do you think it's just stay away because he's going to Nebraska?
Yeah,
I do. Questions.
I do because just what I was told during Dylan's recruitment, and I've also, like you guys, they didn't just take him because he is the younger brother and we got to keep everybody happy. They legitimately really like him. So that's positive that he's going to be, or supposed to be, should be a quality quarterback in that class. The Taylor thing is the one that's most important for Nebraska so that they're not scrambling. They got lucky when they put everything in trying to get Dylan Raiola. And then he says, I'm going to Georgia. It's like, damn, well, I guess we got to go, make good with Danny Kalin and company. We got him. And oh, by the way, Dylan wants to come too. So, if Tamala goes to Alabama and Trey Taylor goes someplace else and Nebraska's probably scrambling, right? And hey, you sure you really want to go to Alabama? Sorry, we haven't called in a while.
Well, the Bama offer is for him. Like they've got a dude that's going to start this year that's going to be there 2 years, and they've moved. And this is not a shot. It's just that he's on their board, and Bama likes him and can presumably get him if he falls out of love with Iowa State. But the thing with Bama is they're having a tough time getting a quarterback for 2026 because of the starter they have now. So they're out to a bunch of guys that are high level, high talent. I mean, that's just what Bama can bring to you. But they are a little bit further down their board, and that's okay. I mean, their quarterback board, if it's a DeBoer board, it's pretty big time.
Well, and you know what Bama has that Nebraska will also have, and that's why this conversation, like Husker fans aren't freaking out about this. And I said this yesterday. Like, first off, Tamala is a 2026 guy, so whenever he shows up to campus, realistically, assuming Raiola does not enter the portal, you have another year of Dylan Raiola. Trey Taylor is the name that was like he comes in that the first year where Raiola could be going off to an NFL draft. If that were to happen after a junior year, that's the first year. Then Trey Taylor comes in. That's the piece you need to have. You need to have that quarterback waiting in the wings just in case Raiola does go off to a draft early. But the side note is, if Trey Taylor isn't ready, if Dayton Raiola isn't what you think, if Latif ends up entering the portal or isn't ready, same thing Alabama has. You can always go to the portal. You're going to have to pay a lot for a quarterback out of the portal, but there's a lot of quarterbacks in the portal every single year. You just have to pick the right one.
Let me give you a quick thought on Dayton because of what Bill was saying. So Dayton is a little bit of a different quarterback from Dylan. It's not just because he throws with his left hand. I watched him throw last summer. He plays in a really, really good offense at the same high school that Dylan did at Buford. So he's throwing to power 4 wide receivers. The whole Dayton Raiola thing might be mute, guys, because you can go in the portal and get a quarterback. It's just I would like to see more attention where the evaluators say, okay, this guy is Elite 11 close, something like that. You know, you balance. Does it really matter if Dayton pans out or not? Because you can always go get a quarterback, and you got your 27 quarterback. And then there's the part of, I for the kid's sake, I would like for him to get some national attention, maybe get bumped to a 4-star with his play, because that would be like, hey, not only did Nebraska, we're not gonna kid you that he's not, he's coming here because he's GBR. He's coming here because of his brother and his dad, but he's also coming here because he's good. But again, it all circles back. Does it really matter if he pans out or not? You'd like him to pan out because you made a commitment to him, but could you skip, not being the guy in 26 because you have your guy in 27 when you're looking at a season that is 3-4 years away? It's just the dynamic of the quarterback room. But I like how Nebraska has built the quarterback room, because they've started to stack some really good classes out of a position where you only take one high school guy and then you supplement with the portal guy.
The thing that Nebraska needs now is to have that quarterback deliver, like be a place where a quarterback goes and plays well, and is part of the reason with this offensive coordinator and head coach that is at the contention level. That's, you need to see it on the field where, all right, I'm going to go to Nebraska and it's going to be okay, and there's going to be good quarterback play, there's good quarterback talent, that talent's developed, that talent goes and wins big ball games. And listen, that's what's so big about Dana. I mean, because he's done it with 5 stars, he's done it with 3 stars. I mean, he's had quarterbacks play at a hell of a high level that have been the tip of the spear for an offense that's fun to play in for kids.
Well, guys, what's the knock-on effect too with Dayton if he stays committed and shows up to Nebraska? You look at that run of players from Buford, and you're going to be going on 6 to 7 years, I think, right? Maybe more. You got Anthony Grant, right? You got Gabe Irvin. Gabe Irvin didn't have a ton of success here, but right. Then of course Dylan, and then now Dayton. Does Nebraska actually benefit from that? Because you're looking at a roster.
You're getting kids from high. Not only there's a ton of Power 4 teammates that they play with, but their schedule, they're playing against high level dudes. That's what's so big about the Buford spot, and then also Florida. I mean, you got the Florida kids playing against elite talent. Yeah.
But there's Nebraska, and it's not sort of like an obscure middle linebacker or something, right? You're talking quarterback position being manned by a Nebraska commit. God, this will be like 4 years in a row, right? Because by the time Dayton's done, he's a 3rd-year starter. I know he's partial starter as a sophomore. Does Nebraska actually benefit from that, of having them so top of mind with guys that tote the rock and guys that run the offense?
Well, it just needs to work out on Saturdays.
Yeah. I think, surprisingly, during this little bit of a downturn, Nebraska's had success in Georgia. In Georgia high school football, I love Florida high school football. And by the way, they're going through, they had spring games last night, and they have spring football wrapping up next week, which would be nice to have in Nebraska, but we have the state track and field tournament. Just kidding. Is Nebraska's had success in Georgia. Like the brand is pretty good in the state of Georgia, and Georgia high school football, because of the population shift, has really taken off. I mean, it is big time Friday nights in the state of Florida, or the state of Georgia. But then you see, with the hirings of this last go around, Nebraska's commitment to recruiting in the state of Florida.
Yeah, Florida's big time, and you've seen the Florida kids play well young. Sharpie, what's the week?
Let me throw one more thing out here about Jet. And guys, I would, and this will tick some people off, because Class A is going to be lopsided again, and I think it's going to be that way for a while in the state of Nebraska. You better go watch Millard South play. Millard South, to me, because there's a running back, Nelson Wheeler, who transferred from Grand Island to Millard South, who is starting to pick up significant offers, and Nebraska has started to kick the tires on an in-state running back who is going to have major Power 4 offers, who was at Grand Island in a bad offense. He's going to be at Millard South. Millard South might have the best collection of talent that I've seen in a Class A school. I mean, Westside a couple of years ago was loaded. This Millard South team will be unbelievable. So we talk about the Buford, Georgia pipeline. What's the vibe with the Millard South program and Nebraska? Because they've had guys, whether they've gone to Iowa State or they've gotten offers where you're like, where is Nebraska? Where is Nebraska? That's kind of coming
Stenger.
from, that's
You got
coming
Gage
from
Stenger now.
140. What he wasn't there. I will call this the new Millard South.
Okay.
Gage was a little bit before this.
Yep.
You know, it's going to be that, it's going to be that
Coach.
weird dynamic because Millard South is, you know, is going to be this football powerhouse. Nebraska's gotten in at Westside, but can they crack Millard South? Because Millard South this fall, you guys need to go watch them play. It's not great for Class A football, but they're going to be friggin' loaded. But let me throw this out there before we wrap up. What if Ohio State drops an offer on the Millard South quarterback? What happens? Because you'd have two programs where the head coach is a quarterback whisperer from Sioux Falls to Washington to Alabama, and then you have a program which develops high school quarterbacks. What if Ohio State drops an offer? Does that have any impact on Nebraska?
Oh, it has a ton of impact because folks are freaking out about the Bama part for sure, in a good way for him. That's impressive. They're simmering on the Iowa State part, how Iowa State's infiltrated 6 Nebraska kids for their 26 class. And then the cherry on top is oh no coming in, and all they do is put out first round talent at quarterback. So the reaction would be a bit of a firestorm where, dude, you better offer him. But if you offer him, does that upset the plans you've already laid down with your recruiting and the work you've put in for your future quarterback room?
Well, if you offer
the PR part, that's just
right. That
take a drink.
PR pickle. I mean, if you offer, and it looks like you came in to offer it as a protection, to protect the turf, you know, that translates to the who gets the offer. Like, you're just offering me now because you don't want somebody. Yeah, you don't want somebody else to come, but you really like the other guy that 2 weeks ago was making national news, and now you're coming in to ask me to come here. Now maybe he's GBR and has been forever, and this is, you know, what I've always wanted. So I understand. Just like Danny Kalin said when the whole Raiola thing happened, right? You know, he said all the right things, and this is where I want to be. Good on him. But that's the delicate balance that Matt Rule and really any other coach that's trying to protect their turf. Do we go outside to get the best player for our offense, what we want to do schematically, for us to expand our territory into, let's say, Taylor, the Chicagoland area, you know, the heartbeat of Big Ten country, so that we have a presence there now, just like there's a presence in Georgia and Florida and all that. I mean, Taylor's important for a couple of reasons. He's a coveted quarterback, X's and O's, and he's also has an address that is coveted in the Big Ten. But we got to go back and make sure that we get protect Millard South in this era of it will eventually be 105. I get the grandfathering. Are you reactionary? Are you protecting? Are you going out and being aggressive to get exactly what you need to win in this era of college football?
You've been through this rodeo before with Danny and Dylan, and you were able to swing it back in favor and let Danny know the truth, where he is, what they think of him. And here's our board. We're being honest with you. You keep that same approach. You keep that communication going, and it plays out how it plays out.
I think it would be, you're talking about the PR, Schmidt. I think we also have to do one quick thing on the PR. I have high respect for Matt Campbell. I've wondered for years why Iowa State was not more active in Omaha in recruiting, and now they are. they've dipped their toe in Lincoln. It's not like they are winning, and I'm not disrespecting the players that are going to Iowa State. They're not beating Nebraska for in-state kids. The one kid that is up in the air and is not going to – Nebraska's not on the radar, and probably not Iowa State either, but is Isaac Jensen, the tight end from Millard South. Yeah. So that PR part. Here would be the PR, because it would get uncomfortable. Like, if Alabama and Iowa State are offering a kid in your backyard, why you're not? I would hope Nebraska does nothing, because I think it would be a bad look. Yep. If all of a sudden you made your evaluation early, you set up your quarterback room, and it looks like it's a reactionary offer.
Yep.
And it's kind of like, it's the Rizak thing. So, Teddy Rizak got offered by Notre Dame, and Nebraska didn't offer for a while, and then they offered, and then he kind of had his heart set on Notre Dame, but it looked like a reactionary offer to an in-state kid. I'm like, come on. So I would hope that Nebraska does nothing. They're confident in their quarterback recruiting. They love their room currently. They like what's in the future, and they've made their evaluation, and they stick with it. And you know what? Here's the thing about quarterback recruiting, guys. They won't bash the kid. They'll keep the lines of communication open, because what happens if things don't work out in 2 years?
Yeah.
You might be better at recruiting that Omaha quarterback that is in the portal 2 years later than you are right now.
Well, and Nebraska's going to not take the state for granted. They're going to do a good job of making sure they connect and communicate with all the coaches. I mean, I think they're sincere about that, and I appreciate that. And I think the coaches across high schools, absolutely. As long as you send someone out to take a look, give us a fair evaluation, and then if it's not a fit, great. But thanks for the time. Yeah. You put the time in, you put the evaluation.
And they're doing that.
They are, and that's what has to happen.
Yeah, it's the other positions
more weight.
It's
the offer has more weight in state, the fewer that come out.
But it's also making the priority not just really good quarterbacks. If Millard South has a great linebacker and a great left tackle, and you go all in and say you are who we want and we need you, and GBR, you've done a great job protecting the quarterback that's going to Alabama, but you are who we want, and you recruit in a way that is honorable, respectful, and open, that pipeline's going to stay open. It's just that, the quarterback was really good, just doesn't fit what we have right now. But these other two guys are exactly who we want. So it's not as though if you just say, we're not taking the quarterback, well, you guys can't come on campus again. Millard South and West Side. I think Christian Jones is one of the most important recruits Nebraska football has gotten in the Matt Rule era, along with Carter Nelson. But to get the best player in Omaha last year and to take advantage of the Colorado game, that's when he made his announcement.
They got two. Tyson, watch out for Tyson Terry too.
Right. So, those are prime guys in Omaha that Nebraska went out and they won the recruiting battles and brought them into the fold. So, there's going to be some guys who are really, really good high school quarterbacks or high-profile players that might go elsewhere. But if you lose one or two and gain the five that you need and want and recruited well and did with great relationships, there's not going to be damage done. It's just you're losing a quarterback, but you got who you wanted from Chicago or wherever.
Not every, and again, I cover high school football, and I love that kids get offers and opportunities. Not every kid that is in state is deserving of a Nebraska offer or fits what Nebraska is doing and where they want to go. And if it's not going to be Nebraska, I hope they get an offer where they can go and play Power 4 football. Bryson Williams is somebody who's kind of flying under the radar, and he's a cornerback at Westside. His mom and dad both played sports at Nebraska. He just got an offer from Iowa State. Westside's quarterback, his dad was a pretty good defensive lineman. So it's the balance, but also we've all five of us have talked about this. If you are 7-5, isn't the in-state discussion a lot louder? But if you're 9-3, that guy could be from Timbuktu playing quarterback. Well, a guy in Lincoln Christian is Rico, and you're like, we got the better guy. Isn't that what this does come down to about in-state guys?
Absolutely.
Winning, and how do the in-state guys? What are they doing? Are are they prevalent and contributing? Like you look at the championship teams, they had a ton of Nebraska flavor. Not only did you get a homegrown kid, the homegrown kid was good enough to play and dominate and be a difference maker. That's ultimately what it comes down to. Sharpie pulling the ripcord.
Yeah, he had to go real quick. But, well, and I think Nebraska fans, I don't hear a lot of talk anymore about, oh, Nebraska's got to recruit in-state better. I just don't hear a lot of that because I think there's been enough recent evidence of guys that haven't worked out, right, from Nebraska. Because I thought that was one thing that Rule did pretty well when he showed up was secure a lot of those commitments, keep those guys around. But especially offensively, how many of those guys have worked out? Right?
Well, and the other part of it too.
So,
look at Rule too, fellas, with just laying it down for you, dude. If the kid's an in-state kid and it's not working out and he's unhappy, these are my words. It's an even bigger pain in the ass because they're from here.
Yeah,
you're going to hear about.
But seriously, I mean, just look at receiver alone, right? Between Lloyd, Coleman, Davion Hall, and
Lloyd would have worked out here. I hope he kills
that's a loss, right?
Ding,
that's
ding,
a guy
ding,
that produced, and
Lloyd
so
killed it early.
You don't like losing him, yeah. But I'm just saying, there's like 4 receivers from the Metro that just aren't on the roster anymore, right?
Well, yeah, and I think here's another, and this is a deep conversation. You won't. I think Nebraska, Donovan Jones and Caleb Benning have a chance to play a lot of football this upcoming fall. They're Omaha kids. Yeah. There aren't going to be a lot of Nebraskans that are going to be starting. You could have your 2 top starters and actually maybe your 3 top starters at tight end are all from the state of Nebraska, from Papillion to Kearney Catholic to Ainsworth. But other than that, there's not like, okay, that guy's a Nebraskan, but that's not being brought up much. There's another, like if you're something you were saying, Mark, if you know when you get here, you've got a good state that's got good high school football and people want you so badly to recruit in-state kids and you're going to do it and you have the right plan. Do you get a little gun shy when you go all in on in-state guys and they don't work out?
You have to.
And then does it circle back to maybe the most important in-state guy in terms of this mindset of can they play here is Carter Nelson? Because Nebraska went all in on Carter Nelson. And I know it's early and he got hurt. So I'm not, we don't even know what he can be. But what if he doesn't pan out to be what they think he can be? Does that make you even more a little bit gun shy about in-state kids? And if they're able to make the transition from I was the guy in my high school, everybody knows me. Now I'm at Nebraska. I'm not the guy and everybody still knows me.
It's a case by case thing, obviously, but that was a super important, first in-state get challenge that Matt Rule had to meet and won because of who was coming in. Whether the guy, we all hope it happens for him because he's a freak athlete, whether the guy plays or not, you had to get him that early in your tenure here.
Yeah.
We're laying down the law. We're going to go get the pride of Ainsworth. I'm going to wear some cowboy boots and, a Stetson, and we're going to have some chili. And it's going to be a recruiting win for Nebraska with everybody else flying in. Because that would have been a declaration of war and an invasion. And you're seeing the invasion continue with a borderless recruiting world. But you couldn't lose that out of the gate. If you're Matt Rule, and he didn't.
Maybe what it is maybe less of a benefit of the doubt that maybe you used to give, and maybe you don't consider the political sort of ramifications as much as Rule probably did when he first got here. I'm just feeling like, oh, better lock up anybody that's worthy of an offer, better get him an offer. I think you just need to apply the same bar that you apply elsewhere here, right? Take Malachi, for instance. He is a top shelf athlete with top shelf measurables. That works. Jalen Lloyd.
Great.
Jalen Lloyd is incredibly fast, right? So that totally works out. And you go all the way back in the day to guys like Amon, Eric Crouch, or whatever, those guys were top shelf specimens or top shelf speed. I think it's just that you just have to apply the same rules. You can't take flyers, right? If you're going to offer a guy wherever the hell he's from, he better be sub 4.5 or bench 9,000 pounds or something. They got to be big time. Like, I think the days of being, projects. Oh, he's pretty good. We'll put 70 pounds
Can't
on
take
him
as many.
And yeah, we'll put 70 pounds on him and he'll be honorable mention Big Ten in 3 years. Like, no.
Well, you could promise that back 10, 20 years ago. You could get all the really good, players around the state, put them on a county scholarship. You could take all the great players from around the state and you could rope off the state and get them to walk on. It was a source of pride that you were a walk-on at Nebraska. And then you had the promise that maybe you might be able to earn one if one of these coveted recruits comes in and they don't pan out. So there was something that was instilled in high school, really good high school football players around the state, that if you come here, you could earn a scholarship. And it was worthwhile to them to be that hometown hero and get here. You can't do that anymore. You have to take the best available and hope they're already developed enough that they can compete and earn the scholarship and the NIL money that they're being promised and given and all of that. I mean, they got to earn it. They got to earn their money now, not just a scholarship. And so you can't just take a flyer and put everybody in a corral because they want to play for dear old Nebraska unit. It goes back to what Gary said. 9-3 is a whole hell of a lot different than 7-5. Right.
It's Bill Doleman, Gary Sharp, Mark Kraynak. I love the hashtag. I'm just noticing it now 2 hours later. Save Chris. And Elijah Herbel. We appreciate you greatly here with the Average Joe Sports Show Weekend Edition. We are back tomorrow for the Sunday Live.
I was going to say this conversation could go on forever.
Yes,
we do need some meat on the bone for tomorrow.
The in-state philosophy.
I would just, by the way, I was looking over here because one more on the other screen, unofficial count. For all that we're talking about when Nebraska high school football, there's 38 guys on the roster, unofficially, from what I just counted. 38 guys on the roster that are from the state of Nebraska, right? So it's not like it's dried up. It is still absolutely the core of the football team. But I think what we're talking about is those top end guys, right?
Well, what's going to get you to guys? It's going to get you to the CFP or the Big Ten. I mean, that's where we're at, guys. Appreciate you.
Recruiting Wahoo. That's
what they did. Bishop Newman. I mean, fellas, I'll keep you up to date on social media how Junior's grad party goes. This was I don't know. He had a giant set of teeth with his Russell Wilson tribute. So grad party now. In a little while, we'll rock and roll that, and we'll be back tomorrow at 10:30.
Game Dog, we'll figure out what percentage of those Nebraska in-state players are starters.
Yeah, we'll hear that from Mark Kraynak on a Sunday. Oh, wait.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Not invited. By the way, one more thing. Jack Caglione. I think he's had 9 home runs.
Oh, look at that. The Cags update.
Yeah. He's at 9 now. Somebody was asking, we were talking about Max Anderson earlier. He's AA. He's hitting like 323 right now. 6 bombs. Like he's starting to figure out. He kind of struggled early hitting.
He's hitting like Kraynak's kid, right?
Well,
Junior's hitting bombs.
Next Chasers homestand after Memorial Day.
Okay,
is this through?
That's the general feeling because he's still in AA. They want him to play more in right field.
Okay.
So okay,
you got to go visit Uncle Gary then. Go check out a ball game
because they have a back-to-back homestand, so they're home for 12 games.
Do you think they'll? Do you think people will come out in droves? Do you think it'll?
Yes.
Do you think it'll sell out?
Yeah.
Do you think he's achieved that status?
I know that because I was out there last night. Bluey Night is selling very well.
The TV show?
Yeah. They have Bluey Night. Bluey Night is selling better than Firework Night.
I'm more of a
I need Gummy Night.
Yeah,
but he'll draw a buzz because
it's a Tenderloin.
People in Omaha know who he is. There's a buildup as a prospect, but also playing in the College World Series, playing against Nebraska. Yeah, everybody knows Keggs. And you'll want to go out and sit in McDonald land in right field as he crushes one 460 feet into a cornfield.
I think you want to sit in the cornfield. That's what I'm saying.
Possibly.
All right.
We'll holler tomorrow, Sunday live, 10:30 with the Average Joe Sports Show. Like and subscribe to the YouTube channel with the Average Joe Sports Show, Spotify, iTunes. Have a great weekend, and we'll holler tomorrow. Thanks.
Godspeed.